So I'm going to go over the story about LRE and its expansion and how that fundamentally changed the outlook for the business and how we created a business plan to manage that growth and all the risks that came with it. And then I'm going to try and then as part of the presentation, we'll talk about how Adapt2 and the Energy Exemplar product suite was a good partner for us to help us move the business plan forward. So a little bit about LRE. So what happened to LRE is we were a very quiet onesie twosie kind of shop for many years. And then I think it was in 2018, 2019, OMERS, which is a Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System, they have an investment bank or an infrastructure fund, and they bought LRE as their growth platform in the renewable phase and the renewable space. So they decided that they were going to scale up the business from what we were, and at the time we were only like 1,500 megawatts of installed capacity. So today we are 4,000 megawatts of installed capacity, and our objectives are much, much bigger. So I think it was about just pre-COVID or during COVID, we acquired the development pipeline of First Solar Energy and incorporated it into our long-term business strategy. And as you can see from the slide here, our objectives are quite big, right? We've added almost 1,000 megawatts last year. The goal is the stated goal is 1,500, but the internal metric is closer to 2,000 megawatts a year of growth and installation. And we have 10,000 gigawatt objective by 2028. So as you can tell, right, the growth at LRE is really explosive, and with that comes a lot of challenges, which we'll cover a little bit. So this is our footprint. This is our operating portfolio. It's technology and geographically diverse. So we're in most of the ISOs. We're also in the West, where we have transmission assets as well. And the growth of the portfolio kind of mimics this. There'll be more in PJM, but there'll also be more in ERCOT. We're going to enter SPP. We're going to expand California. We're going to do more in WEC. So the portfolio footprint is going to remain big and diversified, both technology-wise and market-wise. So as you can see from the pipeline, there's 3,000 megawatts of wind coming on, 17,000 of solar, and so we've got a solid pipeline. And I'll show you the projected growth per our build plan here in a second, and you'll see that it's really parabolic. The hockey stick looks tame compared to our growth expectations. So this is our management team. Jason Allen, he's been in the business for a long time. Greg Hazelton, who's our CFO, also been in the business a long time. I'm sure you've run across this cast of characters in previous lives, given that the industry is so small and a little bit tight-knit. But this is a solid team, everything from operations to HR, lots of experience. Like the slide says, 200 years of experience across all technologies and all expertise. But this is the real show is about to start. So one last corporate thing that we have to do is that LRE is really a committed partner in its communities. We really believe in being environmentally responsible. We do a lot of vegetation management, bees, sheep on sites to all kinds of to promote the better use of the environment on top of delivering clean energy to the communities. Obviously, we are very active in social issues, and the governance is very strong governance with several board and reporting back to Toronto at OMERS. So we were talking about the growth, and you can see here, right, that in 2023 we were managing 7 assets, all of which were outsourced as far as scheduling and settlement. And in 24, last year, we went to 12, and this year we're going to go to 20, and then it keeps on going. Now, we have a goal of 10,000 megawatts by 2028, so this slide is a little bit outdated. So you can see that to get to 10,000, we're probably going to have to add maybe another 15 projects. So by 2028, we'll have about 60 projects that will need to be managed. And this is all projects that are not directly contracted with the utility, that the utility manages on their own. This is LRE has to provide all the scheduling, settlements, and risk management for all those assets, right? So you can see the curve is really exponential, and you can see, whoops, I guess if I step away you can't hear me, but there's another piece that goes even higher, in 27 and 28, right? So it's really, really hyperbolic. So what does that do for us, right? Obviously, as you grow, right, everything gets bigger. The law of big numbers, right, it gets really big. So obviously, the cost of outsourcing 60 assets to somebody like Tenaska or CES or anybody else gets really expensive, right? So then you start thinking, well, maybe we can do it better ourselves and have more control over the process ourselves. Then the other thing that happens is the business model for OMERS is we build and contract the assets through long-term PPAs, typically in liquid trading hubs. So this creates a lot of basis risk. It's one thing to manage 7 assets, right, at 1,500 megawatts installed basis risk, as opposed to a portfolio of 60 units with 10,000 megawatts and having basis in practically every single market from California, CAISO, SPP, ERCOT, and PJM, right? So that's really, okay, you're really increasing the level of market exposure and risk mitigation that's needed. The flip side to that, though, is because the portfolio is so big, there's an opportunity really to optimize the assets, right? You can do day-ahead real-time optimization, but you can also do basis mitigation through FTRs, and then you can also do volatility trading, both short-term and long-term. And so when we looked at this in 2022, we said, okay, how do we solve these problems, and capture this opportunity? So we put together a business plan, and the business plan, the mission was pretty simple. It was we wanted to build a business organization that could be self-sufficient, right? Manage all the assets, maximize the portfolio revenue, and then mitigate the risk, right? And so the objectives coming up from that mission statement were, all right, we need to develop all this in-house capability, infrastructure-wise, so we can do it ourselves. And then we need to identify how we want to mitigate the risk, how we want to capture the opportunities, right? We knew that we didn't want to be a full-blown trading shop, right? That is not what OMERS bought when they bought us, but they also understood that they needed to mitigate risk because the portfolio was getting bigger and bigger, right? So we moved forward with what was now called LRE Energy Services, and essentially it's a very targeted portfolio management, risk mitigating activity. And so that was the plan. So what did it look like when we pitched it to the board? Well, we said, okay, here's the risk, right? The risk is you got scaling growth that's really making the numbers really big. You got commodity price exposure, both from a basis perspective and from merchant positions. So then, okay, what's the opportunity for us? Well, the opportunity for us was, well, we can save a lot of money operationally by repatriating and doing a lot of the scheduling and settlements ourselves. Obviously, that requires infrastructure and building out teams. On the commodity exposure, we said, okay, well, we already do day-ahead real-time, but then we need to do more than that, right? We need to be able to capture volatility surrounding weather events. We need to be able to capture forward hedge activities, market volatilities, right? The market moves up and down. It gives you opportunities. It also gives you risk. It's not always flowers but it's but you got to be in it. You have to participate in the markets. When you're this big, when you get this big, you just can't sit on the sidelines. And then for basis, kind of same thing as the commodity exposure. And Ross was talking about things that keep him up at night. This is one that keeps me up at night. Like, this is just big. And if you think about, what a 10,000 megawatt portfolio with basis looks like across 4 markets, and you can get an idea of how big the basis can get in some of these markets and how volatile it can get, it's big money, right? It's a huge opportunity. So, all right, so now we have the opportunity, we have the risk, so what's the plan? Well, the plan was to build out the infrastructure, both people and risk policies and IT infrastructure, right, systems. So Adapt2 is who we chose to be our partner, and for a lot of different reasons. One is they very prominent in bid to bill and scheduling and settlements, good platform. They had Adapt2 Green, which is a platform that allows us to manage our PPAs and our RECs portfolio. They also had transmission tagging available as part of the system. We own some transmission out west that we optimize as part of this portfolio. So that's going to be coming in. And then we had the ability to take all the data generated by Adapt2 from all these activities, and that we can tie it into our general ledger. So not only was it providing all the functionality, it was also providing the data that we can integrate into our accounting systems. So that was on the scheduling and settlement side. So then we said, okay, now what do we need to do to manage risk appropriately? So the first thing we did as a company is we decided, okay, what are our risk policies, right? As a company that has always been a developer and never really cared much about optimizing anything and not trading anything and not hedging anything, we needed to set up a framework for how we wanted to operate the business. So we spent about, I would say, 3 to 6 months writing procedures and policies about everything from risk limits to volume limits to mark-to-market limits, VAR limits, procedures, who does what, when they can do what, delegation of authorities, right? We spent a lot of time doing that. So then we said, okay, now we've got that. Now we need a risk system that can report it, measure it, and capture it. And so that's where the Adapt2 ETRM came in. The Adapt2 ETRM allows us, to book all our trades, to look at all our risk, and then it really does a lot more. It integrates our generation forecast into our risk system. So every morning we take weather forecasts, we dump them into Adapt2, and it spits out our risk position for the day, and then we make trading and optimization decisions accordingly. So that's how we ended up with Adapt2. So now what does that look like, right? Whoops, come on. Oh. Thank you. Okay. It doesn't seem to like me. Yeah. No, it's just frozen. This was the big finish. I mean, I stole my moment. Let's just.
He just wanted me to come near. Oops.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, let me go bring it back up on screen.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna have a big finish after all, folks. All right, let's do this again. There you go. All right, so after we chose Adapt2 and we did all the risk system, we said, okay, what does a transaction life cycle look like at LRE, right? So we broke it up into 4 different parts. We broke it up into position and risk management, the market assessment, the actual execution, and the settlement and performance of it. So the position and risk management, so just let's start here. Anything that's in red and orange or yellow is actually going through Adapt2. Everything else is not. So as you can see that our Adapt2 system is really integrated into what we do every day, right? So on the position and risk management, right, like as I was saying earlier, we take our 14-day generation forecast for all our assets, we including the outages, we dump it into Adapt2. Adapt2 does the math and tells us what our open position is, what our mark-to-market is, what our VAR is, what our gross margin at risk is, and that's the baseline for decision-making every day. right? So then we go through the market assessment. So the traders come in, they get all their risk positions, and then they start looking at price forecasts that they get from third parties or internal. They look at weather patterns. They look at, what's the load stack, what are the ramp rates, what congestion is there, and then they make their trading decisions, right? What am I doing? What am I offering real time? What am I taking day ahead? Am I buying something on ice to mitigate it? Do I want to do a term trade because gas prices are up? These are all the decisions that happen in market assessment, right? So then we get to transaction execution. So now that they've made the decisions of what they want to do, they execute the trades. So when they execute the trade, they capture the trade, it goes through Adapt2. If it's a bilateral transaction, Adapt2 creates a transaction confirmation for both us and the counterparty. Then we schedule the transactions. That's how we offer our generation assets, our IBTs, which are internal bilateral transactions with the ISOs. And then as we do all these transactions, we get another update of the risk system, which also goes through Adapt2, right? So as you can see so far, we're very integrated with Adapt2, right? And then, of course, the last part is the settlement and risk and performance, right? So obviously, all the generation stuff gets settled with the ISO. So we get, Adapt2 brings in all the settlement data for us, right? And then we also, after the trades have settled, we run another P&L and mark-to-market assessment, right? So the life cycle of transactions at LRE really depends on Adapt2, and Adapt2 is really the center of all our infrastructure. I will say that I've been on several trading desks before, and we've built businesses on existing platforms. Like we added a rec desk to a power desk. We started a rec desk again at an ethanol shop, or we added another power market to an existing desk. That is so much easier than what we're doing here, because here we started with nothing, right? Like infrastructure from scratch. Like we built it from nothing. So these are all like pretty words, but how does it work process-wise? So this is what it looks process-wise, right? So everything inside the red box is what happens in Adapt2, and everything outside of the red box is how Adapt2 takes in information and how we use it, right? So as you can tell here on the left side, right, all the market data, ICE, Platts, Meteorologica, which is a weather forecast. It goes into our ETRM, which generates curves, calculates implied volatility, generation forecasts. Then that flows down to trade capture. It updates the mark-to-markets for each one of those. And then it spits it out, and it goes to our management or the trader or whatnot, right? Then at the center of it is the scheduling module, where we do all our optimization from day ahead in real time. We do physical bilaterals, whether they're financials or pure scheduling. And as you can see, the scheduling module takes inputs from the ISO, takes inputs from non-ISO trades, right? So it's all fully integrated, right? Like the main reason we chose Adapt2 is, first of all, the functionality was good, and we only wanted to have one system. We didn't want to have Allegro for ETRM and this thing for something else. We just wanted everything on one platform. Plus, it was Microsoft compliant or Microsoft based, and we're a Microsoft based shop. So like it really was a natural fit for us, right? And again, the settlement side kind of works like the scheduling. It gets inputs from the markets and does all its math and settlement process, PPAs, FTRs, all that stuff. And then at the end of the day, it spits out credit reports and back office and P&L and all that sort of stuff, right? So for us, the growth that we experience, caused us to seek a business solution, and in Adapt2, because of the ability to integrate across all the platforms that we needed, was the partner we chose. So I don't know if you have any questions. I'll be glad to answer questions. Yes, sir.
I'm coming. Get my exercise in.
Alexandre Garot from Total Energies.
One question. Sometimes we are really creative with the contract formula.
Mm-hmm.
How flexible is Adapt2 to fit with all the contract formulas?
Quite a bit, actually. We have several PPAs that have like basis. How do I say basis? Obviously, there's basis. What is the word?
Basis selection?
No. Well, there's a basis. There's a basis sharing provision, which has a complicated equation. So Adapt2 does that for us. We have a PPA settlement module that allows us to input the formula, input the market data into the system, and then the system calculates the settlement even for, basis mitigation provisions that are in the PPA. We have another PPA that's got 2 different settlement points, and we got that configured in Adapt2 that it settles accordingly. So there's a lot of flexibility. I will say that I think we had an idea of what Adapt2 could do for us, right? Like, you read the brochure, it says, oh, we'll do this and we'll do that, and that's great. And it's all true, right? But then we challenged them and said, well, what about this? Can we do this? And every time we asked them whether they could do it, the answer was yes, right? So, and I honestly think that as we grow, right, we're going to find out that we need things that we don't even know yet. And I really do think that the system can adapt to do that, right? Obviously, there's a lot of out-of-the-box stuff that's easy that we use, but I think it could be customized if you wanted to as well. Now, we're trying not to customize, but every time we have a request, can you do this? Or we would like this, the answer's always been yes.
Any other questions?
Right here.
Hey, Paul Holden with Constellation. Exciting to see.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Constellation, yeah. Really impressive presentation and seeing what Adapt2 can do for you. I'm just more curious, how long did it take to build all this out? What was that process like?
So that's a good question because our situation is a little unique. So it's still in progress. A lot of it's still in progress, right? So we ran into issues with market participant applications, and then we ran into issues with not having the proper hardware to communicate with ERCOT to manage your assets. So there was a lag period between what we wanted to accomplish and when we could accomplish it, right? So let me tell you what we did accomplish and what's still open, right? So over the last, we lost about a year to PJM markets simply because the application took so long, and 6 months later than we wanted in ERCOT. So the ERCOT stuff is going to be wrapped up this month, and then PJM hopefully will wrap up this month, next month, assuming we get the hardware from PJM. It's always the hardware issue, right? So here's what we did do. So we have a fully functioning ETRM. We can trade capture everything. We can report risk. We can measure the risk for capacity, REX, power. We could do it on an hourly basis. We can do it on by product bucket, and we could do it term, right? So that's done. That was done very early on in the process. That was the very first thing we did. We started that, I think it was in July of last year, and by September 5th, we were done with all of that. So that was pretty quick. Then you were asking about the PPA settlements. That's the next thing we did. We were able to use our existing, we were organized poorly with PJM, so we had certificates for each one of our plants. So we used those certificates and jerry-rigged a little bit the process to get all the configuration for the PPA settlements done. So we got all of those done. So I think we have, now 7 or 8 PPAs in PJM that are settling through that. In ERCOT, we did all the virtual stuff. We're doing point-to-points. The next step for us is, like I said, we're going to finish the generation stuff. I think by June 1st, we'll have repatriated the first 3 assets from third parties so we can do our own scheduling. And then I think we're getting a final approval to do CRRs and FTRs. So we're going to get that done here in the next 4 weeks. And then the big one is going to be PJM, where we're waiting for the hardware to communicate the assets. But in the meantime, we're going to move all the assets into the new market participant. And then we'll also do all the virtual stuff, all the FTR stuff, and then the only thing left will be the asset stuff. And then what's coming next is we're going to do SPP. We're having 4 assets coming in this summer, Q4 of this year in SPP. So we'll extend that as well. Yeah. So it's been a little bit bumpy only because, you know, a lot of the stuff that we had to have ready out of the box wasn't ready out of the box. So we worked with Adapt2 to be like flexible, and so we've done a lot of stuff, but there's still a little bit more work to be done.
That's great. Congratulations on what you built, what you're building.
Thank you. I will say this, the only advice I would give if anybody wants to take this project on at some point in their career, it's very satisfying and it's like really transformational, right? Because if you would ask somebody at LRE 5 years ago, oh yeah, you guys are gonna have a trading floor, nobody would have believed you, right? But now we do have a trading floor. But what I will say that is like if you're gonna start this type of implementation, I think it's really important to have the front end all cleaned up and ready to go. We were trying to do things in parallel, and unfortunately we got tripped up by the ISOs. And so, you know, while we've done a lot of good progress, there's still a lot of work left to be done. Yeah. But hopefully we think by the end of the summer we should be completely done with everything.